Buerki, the author behind Living Without Fear and the co-publisher of the Amazon best-selling Inspired Journeys. If you're ready to embark on a journey of boundless possibilities, I'm here for you. Do you know someone who could benefit from today's episode? Share this podcast with them. Don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter, join me on YouTube, and if you enjoyed what you heard, leave a short review or rate it on your favorite podcast platform with a lot of stars. Your support means the world to me, and I'm truly grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you. And today I'm so grateful to have Kevin Hughes from Australia with me. Kevin is the leading profit maximization expert with over 2 decades of experience as a senior leader, financial strategist, and international speaker. Kevin quickly improves business profits, cash flow, and net worth. His clients enjoy the benefits of his mastery in human behavior and change to make lasting differences in the performance of them, their teams, and their organization. Kevin has been trusted by Tony Robbins to speak at several of his events and to coach his top-level clients. He has made it a mission to learn from the world's best in human performance and business, and he shares this wisdom through his podcast, Life-Changing Questions, which has been received more than 55,000 plus downloads. Welcome to the show, dear Kevin.
It's a pleasure to be here. We met probably over half a decade ago now, I think, in one of those events that I had the opportunity to present at, and it's amazing to see your journey. You know, you're a multiple author now, and you have this amazing podcast, and you're helping people in the world. So I'm really excited to be here and serve you and your audience however I can.
Thank you. So, Kevin, let's start. What has been your turning moments? I'm so curious to hear.
There's been several over the years, but I want to go back to one of the first turning points. So you said I'm Australian. I describe myself as being Brit-Australian. I grew up originally in the UK, and everything was going to plan in the UK. I did the traditional route. I got my qualifications. I went to university. I got my degree. I got a good job. And it was like the plan that was laid out for me. And I got a partner, and we got a house, and things were going great. We were due to be married, and I thought everything was on track. Everything was going to plan. And now, a few weeks before the wedding, my fiance at the time decided that actually she didn't want to marry me. And I remember this one moment. If I can go back to the time, we'd gone away for the weekend, and I remember this moment where she took off this engagement ring and put it in my hand. And I don't know if you ever had a moment like this, but my whole head was kind of like exploding. I couldn't really comprehend what was going on. It had come from nowhere. It was nothing I ever expected. As far as I was aware, everything was great in terms of the relationship, and I couldn't quite comprehend it. It spun me out, and things didn't really go much better from there. I think it was the start of a series of things that began to go wrong because this relationship was ending. Then we had this house together. Well, she didn't want to be in clearly didn't want to own that house together anymore. I wasn't sure I was in a position I could afford to buy her out. So it was like, well, I'm losing my partner and I'm going to lose potentially my house. I went to work that week. I was working with Airbus at the time. It was a great job. I was brought in to help build these new facilities and these new factories. And for whatever reason, politically, the work was no longer going to be done in the UK. It was going to be in Spain. So my role was, going as well. And on my drive home from work, some guy ran into the back of my car. So it felt like lost my relationship, was losing my house, my car was in a mess, and and of course the job was going. So it was a pretty challenging time, and I dealt with it in the only way that I knew how at the time, which was I would go and drink. I had to go and drink more beers than I needed to, and this has gone on for a period of months, and clearly that didn't really resolve the situation. And then one of my friends, Matt, he'd been in a similar situation, I think, and he wasn't trained in any coaching, he never had any skills like that. But he said, there's one thing to me, and it was this turning point that you're asking about, we were sat there, I'm drowning my sorrows into this pint. And he said, oh, Kev, I had a similar situation happen to me. My dad asked me this. He said, if I get to 5 years in the future, when I get 5 years in the future, I'm going to look back at this and realize this was a turning point in my life. And it's up to you which way you're going to turn. And it kind of hit me, which way am I going to turn? Right now, I'm drowning my sorrows. Things aren't going great. The work is finishing, the car's messed up, the relationship's messed up. I can't keep turning that way. That's not going to serve me. And when he asked me that question, it kind of opened up this whole world of possibilities about, well, which way am I going to turn? What else can I do? Right. And all these things that were problems all of a sudden became a big advantage. Because one of the things I thought about, well, what way am I going to turn? I always wanted to travel. I wanted to go and see the world. And now, like, maybe I can do that. Well, I don't have a job to worry about. And they were going to give me, a small payout, which would probably fund the travel. I don't have the partner that I was with, never wanted to go and travel in the way that I wanted to. So, well, that wasn't a concern anymore. This car that got run into, well, he's done me a favor because the insurance will pay it out. And that's not an issue anymore. So all these things that were issues, 2 minutes before now weren't issues. All of a sudden I've been given this opportunity to have the freedom and I could travel. And what happened from that and what came from that was kind of, for me, it was this turning point that you mentioned. It was life-changing because I booked myself some flights. I arranged it. Fortunately, at the travel agents, there was a girl who was very excited to do a round the world trip. So she planned my trip for me. I had no idea where I was going, why I was going there. She booked it and like, okay, great, we're off. I got to go through South America, New Zealand. The plan was to go through Australia, Asia, and then back to the UK. But that was back in 2008. And here we are in 2024, and I'm still living in Australia. And when I got down here, the opportunities and the things that were available for me were way different than I ever had in the UK. Living in Sydney, I had a lot more opportunities than I ever would have got where I lived. And life is very different now. I get to live in a beautiful house. We have a pool. We're very close to the beach. We get the flexibility to go travel and do those things. I never in a million years imagined I would have a house with a pool. That was never something that was on the radar. I never would have even dreamt that was a possibility to me. So that was a turning point. And hopefully that overview was about the right length. I didn't go on for too long or too short. So you please guide me.
You said you had several turning moments. That was the first one.
That was the first one. And what happened when I arrived here in Australia then, because that kind of led to the second turning point anyway, I said to, a guy I can work, I got some opportunity, some time here in Melbourne, give me a reference. So he was a guy who was in Sydney, and I said, can you give me a reference so I can work here? And I knew him from the UK, and he said, no, I'm not going to give you a reference. He said, I'm going to send you a plane ticket and you're going to come here and work with me. I said, oh, okay, that was great. I didn't know the company I was going to, and I went and I started working with him, and it was a really great opportunity. Over a period of 4 years, I got way more skill and experience, in the financial world and helping, improve the profits of businesses and the returns of businesses, helping business get refinanced. It was a really great career move. I ended up earning, over double the amount I would have been earning in the UK. When I was in the UK, they said to me, hey, Kevin, is the wrong time in your career to leave? Like, you really shouldn't be leaving now. It's bad for your career. But I got here and had a better opportunity, double the amount of money, and lifestyle was great. And what happened after a period of time of working in that organization and another organization, I started to look around at the people who were ahead of me. So I was a senior financial executive, and the people in front of me were, C-suite people, and they were doing amazing for the business. They were doing great things there. But what I noticed is they didn't have necessarily the same values as I did in some respects. They either didn't have children or were never around their children. And I knew for me, from my values and what was important for me was like, well, I want to make sure when I have children that I have the flexibility to be with them. I can actually do that. And the other thing that was challenging for me was working in that corporate environment was I never had any time flexibility. Like, all my time was taken up. I was working long hours, evenings, weekends. Sometimes, food was from the vending machine or takeaways all the time. So my health was suffering. And I didn't want that to be my future. And I think the turning point, and we discussed this very briefly before, you've done some work now with Tony Robbins. I found myself at a Tony Robbins event, and I was in this room with thousands of people from all over the world. And I know everyone gets excited about this thing called the firewalk, which was great. That was, very empowering. Hey, I climbed over fire. That was exciting. But the turning point for me came a day or two later when he does this thing called the Dickens process. And what the Dickens process does is, well, you think about the book, there's the ghost of the past, the present, and the future. And so what he's really doing, this Dickens process, is shining a light in on where you're at right now and then magnifying it, right? So if you continue to do what you're doing now, right, where's that going to lead you in 5 years? Where's it going to lead you in 10 years? Right. And he would get you to that from a perspective, what's good about that. And more so, is that going to be where you want to be? What's the negative side of that? And I think in doing that, he really got me emotionally connected to, well, yeah, this corporate career is good. I get paid well. I get to, get to travel to some cool places. But is that where I want to be in 5 years? Is that where I want to be in 10 years? And I think it came up very clear for me. Well, no, it's not. Like I could do very well in that career. I could get paid very well. Have good esteem, good recognition from doing it. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. I was feeling more called towards doing something that was helping others, helping make a difference to other people. And so the realization at that event, at that moment, it was the genesis of a turning point. At that moment, I didn't know what it was going to be, but I just knew I needed to step out of what I was doing and go and do something else, something that was more aligned with my values, something that would allow me to serve other people, something that would allow me to have, when I eventually did meet a woman and have, a family, have the flexibility and time freedom to be with them. And so that, I think that was the another turning point that, that really put me on a different path and made me start to think about, well, what's another way? Is there another way? We kind of get these beliefs in our head that this is the way. That was the roadmap that was given to me. Get your job, get your education, get your house, stay in your career, and now I was in this position questioning, like, hey, is this the right thing? And so that was the start of another turning point.
And if you look forward now in 10 years maybe or 20 years, what would you like to achieve? Because you've done so much already.
Hey, really beautiful question. So when I think back to that, because that would have been a decade ago when I thought of that, I look forward and my vision was to be able to have that flexibility and time freedom and be with the kids and serve people and make a difference. And now that's what I'm doing. So if I look forwards another decade from now, that my children right now are age 7 and 5. So a decade from now, they're going to be 17 and 15. So in that time, once they get to 17, 18, they're probably going to want to be off doing their own things, exploring the world. So my number one goal in that time is to make sure I give them all the opportunities and experiences and magic moments that I can in that time. That's my number one role as father and husband. Same for my wife. I want to make sure I create really magical experiences for them. In that time, I also want to show them about how we can make a difference to other people, how we can be of service. Right now, my business is in a place where I make a difference to the organizations I work with. Some of them have done very well and won awards, or they've made insane profits, or they've managed to sell out and cash out of their business. So my clients are getting really great results. My opportunity over the next decade would be to scale that. Right now, I do my work one-on-one, and that's great because I can be very customized and can be very in detail with them. But I'd like to impact more people. So what that looks like over the next decade, I'm not sure. What's that going to be? But it's going to be in a way of serving a bigger audience.
And if you look at your children, I mean, you always want to avoid things you were suffering from. You said this terribly moment you were with your first fiance, and so do you think sometimes what can you avoid for your children, the suffering?
Hey, well, maybe. I suppose we do value the things that we were avoid of. I think for my children, I mean, if I'm honest, I had a really good upbringing. My parents were great. They loved us. They took care of us, and so from that perspective, no concerns. Financially, I'm sure in the environment that we were growing up in, it would have been great to have more financial resources to be able to do some things or not see my parents concerned about money. So I'd really love to instill in my children an ability for them to have that confidence that they can go and earn their own money, and not necessarily they have to rely on taking a job from someone, but if they don't have a job, there's no availability, they're resourceful. They can find other ways to make income and make money. And so I'm beginning to instill things in them now, not necessarily in terms of way of a lecture or a lesson or something like that, but just in giving them experiences. So one of the things around this, we were playing with AI. We're playing with Midjourney. And so I knew that I could ask Midjourney to make me something, and voila, this amazing picture would appear. And now they saw this, and so they started asking Midjourney, to create these creatures. I'd like a strawberry that's got wings and is like a unicorn, and poof, up it comes. And I would like, the cutest creature you've ever seen, but it's a bit like a spoon, and poof, this thing is created. Well, they had so much fun doing that and being creative that there was enough for a whole book. So we helped them put it in a little book together and then upload it to Amazon. And now they're excited because they put it up there and it's now sold in 3 different countries. We recently got some printed versions off for them. And so they've been able to take that to the dance studio, and some of their friends have brought printed copies. And they're excited that they can do that. Now, here's the cool thing. My daughter was asking, she wanted money. I think she wanted to buy something from the school canteen, and she was asking for money. And I'm like, okay, well, let's make some money then. How are we going to do that? And I'm like, well, great. Let's make a promotional video for your book. And so, the 2 of them got together. We made up a little script. They stood in front of the camera. We recorded it, put a bit of music to it, and that promotional video is out there. They had such fun making that video, and then they get fun on the back end, knowing that the cash is coming. Now, have they made a significant amount of money? No, but they're getting wired up to the fact, I want money. I can go and create something. I can use my imagination and create something that's valuable for others. So they're, and they're thinking in different ways now. I think they've cottoned on to the idea that if they get the grandparents, to collect certain things in the recycling, we can take it to the recycling bank, and the recycling bank will give them money. So that they're now hounding the grandparents, put those tins aside, keep those, and we'll take them. So they're getting wired up to how they can create it, and not because they're in need for money or anything like that, but it's just because it's a game to play. How can we create something? How can we do that? And so um, yeah, maybe for me, the way you framed it, yeah, maybe that was something that I missed out on in my younger years, and maybe I am trying to fulfill that in them. But I just want to make sure they're resourced, that if for any reason mummy and daddy aren't here in the future, they have the ability to figure things out and make it happen.
Beautiful. And what kind of values do you try to install in your children?
We just by the way we live, we're very much about service. We care about others. We put other people first. So we try to install those values. If I think about some of the habits that we have with the kids, in the evening time, whenever we sit down, for the longest time, we've been asking them, what are they grateful for today? Okay. And so even when they were 2 or 3, we were asking them this. And I remember we were in COVID and everyone was upset because we were locked down and we couldn't leave. And this she might be 2.5, and we said, what are you grateful for today? And she said, I'm grateful for self-isolation. Right? She was grateful for the fact that we were all locked down because we were getting more time together. And it was, for me, it was such like one of those reframes, because like we're all being grumpy about this, like we're feeling like our freedom's been taken away, or we can't go out, and whatever else. And here she is saying that she's grateful for the fact that this has happened, grateful for the fact that we can be together. And it was like, yeah, okay. So every night we sit down and share what we're grateful for, and what's going great that day, or what we're grateful for. Recently we went to another friend's house and they did something slightly different to that. They had something that they call high low buffalo, right? And now the kids are a bit older, they can understand this. So they share at the dinner table, what was the highlight of the day, what went really well, what did they enjoy, right? And so yesterday Vasara's was, she met a new friend and her name was Ruby, right? And she's excited about this new friend. And what was the low, like what was the challenging point of the day? And they'll tell us that. And then Buffalo is anything random they feel like sharing as well. And so it really gets a conversation going. It allows us to discuss things and be open about things, and get to celebrate on the wins, and share some lessons as well. So we like to install those things with them. What else from a values perspective? These are 2 key things. Like I think it's important that we speak with good intent, and that we are coming from a place of being positive. So now part of that, of course, is that I'll capture them on their language. If they're using language that isn't serving them, then we'll have a conversation around it. The other piece, of course, is around emotions. A lot of parents, and this was my default, would want to stop their kids from being upset or crying. We're trying to stifle that. And just because it's probably not good that they're too over the top or too over dramatic or anything, but what my wife in particular is very good at is letting them have those emotions, letting them express the full range of their emotions. Now, sometimes it's inconvenient. You're trying to get them off to school, you're trying to get them to go into the school gate, and then they are having a meltdown. And sometimes that feels very awkward because like the other kids are just walking in, but sometimes those other kids have those emotions, they're just not expressing them. So I think the value that we try to bring is that we allow them to express those emotions, allow them to get those feelings out, express what they want. We don't want them hiding them or pushing them down. We want them to kind of get them out. And so that's maybe another piece that's important. Allowing them to express their full selves, the highs and the lows.
Beautiful. And you mentioned gratitude. It's not only for kids, it's also for adults, right? And what kind of other important tools do you give your clients? Maybe it's a bit difficult just to mention. There must be a lot you give, but maybe can you pick 3 things?
Yes. How long do you have? This podcast is becoming so the initial idea of this conversation around the dinner table came from an interview I did with a psychologist who works at Harvard Business School. And I asked her, what's the most important question we should be asking ourselves? And she said every Friday night, she asked her children, what were the wins for the week? And her justification, her reason behind that is not about the Friday night. It's about the fact the whole week, their filter is set for what are my wins. They're looking out for what was great. Now, and I think there's a real big value in identifying that. So that's kind of where we got our question at the dinner table from. Now, the wins thing is a really important point because we have a lot of emotions, and as entrepreneurs, we particularly suck at doing this and counting the wins. We'll be so focused on all of these things we haven't done yet, all of these things that we haven't accomplished yet, that we're missing the things that we've done to move forwards. Now, if we're focusing on all this stuff that sucks and hasn't happened yet, how are we going to feel? We're going to feel pretty bad, right? And then the worse we feel, the less action we're going to take, and it's a bit of a vicious cycle. And so getting more focused on the wins can be really important. One of my favorite examples of this, I had a friend when we were living in the Netherlands, we had a friend come over, and he's an executive in a large company. And anyway, he went into the supermarket to grab some things the wives, had asked, for us to get. I took the kids to the park. Now, I thought he'd be in and out in about 20 minutes, but 30 minutes go by, 40 minutes go by, and he hadn't come out. And so I go into the supermarket to find him. Now, he's an English guy in a Dutch supermarket, so he doesn't understand any of the words or any of the language. And, I think our wives are giving him some unusual things like banana flour. I don't even know how you would say that in Dutch. Anyway, I thought if I'd been in the store that long, I'd be just frustrated. I'd be so annoyed and it's taking so long. Anyway, I got to him, he's so happy. And he's going through the trolley and he's like, oh yeah, I got points for this. I got points for this. I got points for this. I think, what do you mean you got points for this? He said, well, no, I had to get this thing, and so I get points for that. I had to get this thing, and I get points for that. So he's focused on giving himself points for everything that he got on the list. Whereas I would have been at the time been agonizing on the one thing that hadn't got, but he's focusing on all the things that he did. And so he was giving himself progress points. Whenever he made progress, he was giving himself points. And of course, he felt better about that. He was making more progress, feeling great. And so he came out of the supermarket with probably most of the things he needed and feeling in a better state, focused on what he had got, as opposed to me, who would have come out focusing what I didn't have, right? And why it was annoying. Now, that's just a story, an example of it in practice, but how can we do this each day? I've got this book here with me, and is with me at all times, and it's just got a page per day. And at the end of every day, my job is to write down what the wins were. Now, I can't help myself. As I go through the day, I'm already writing them down. So when I've had a good result or something's happened, I write it down. So I can already see in front of me now, there's 5 things here that have been accomplished that have gone well today. And so I'm already feeling great about the day, because during the day, I'm noting down the wins. there's so many things I could write down or notes that I'm frustrated about today. So number one, I think just notice your wins. Yeah, count your wins. I think that's from a psychological point of view, super, super important. So you asked for three, that's one. Do I have time to go into some others?
Of
Do you have any questions on that one
course,
before I do?
Kevin. Of course.
So we both have had an experience of working with Tony Robbins, and one of the things he talks about is he says that the strongest force in a human personality is to remain consistent with how we define ourselves. Now, what does that mean? If I say that I am a terrible sleeper, guess what? I'm going to suck at sleeping. If I say I'm terrible at remembering names, I'm terrible at remembering names, I'm not going to remember your name. Right. Now, this happens in so many different areas. Now, I very frequently in events, I say to people, who has that belief they're terrible at remembering names? Yes. Yes, everyone puts their hands up. And I say, if I gave you $1 million for every name you remember today, would you be good at remembering? Yes, I'd be great at remembering names, right? So is a belief, right? When we've got enough motivation there and it's important enough for us, that belief is just going to go. It's going to vaporize. If I get $1 million for every name I remember, I'm going to remember everyone's name for sure, right? And so the challenge is we say this in a business context, we don't identify ourselves in the way that will really allow us to achieve that next level of growth. So do I see myself as a business owner? A lot of business owners don't identify themselves as a business owner. They don't identify themselves as an entrepreneur. They don't say, I am a marketer. I am an expert at sales. And so there's a lot of things in our identity that if we don't embrace them, we don't describe ourselves in that way, then we're never going to perform and show up in that way. One of my early examples from this was when I worked in that corporate environment. I got promoted because I was very good technically on the financials, on the strategy, on how to turn this business around. But the challenge was I didn't see myself as a leader. So I was given this team of, there was I was 2IC. We had 300 people in this team. I was required to step up and be a leader at times, and there are situations where I didn't, because I didn't see myself as a leader. I would stand back and let someone else kind of step in. So when I realized this and I learned this, I started defining myself as a leader. I started saying to myself, I am a leader. When I go for my run, along the beach, I would be saying to myself up and down the beach, I am a leader. I am a leader. I am a leader. And the more I said it, the more I had to visualize myself and see myself stepping into those situations. When there was leadership required, I step in, it would be done. And sure enough, the more I said that and the more I did that, when a leadership situation arose, I found myself stepping in, and it happened because I'd conditioned my brain on that. So I think perhaps this third tip that's really important, or the second tip that's really important is, well, how are you defining yourself now? And if you think about where you want to be, in your business in 5 years time from now, who do you need to be to make that happen? Maybe you define yourself differently. Maybe you would be a leader. Maybe you would be, in the top 1% of all podcasts. Maybe you would be, whatever it is, however you define yourself in that way, and then start behaving like that. If you define yourself as a leader, start behaving as a leader. I was saying this, I am an author. I am an author. I am an author. And I never sat down to write. I never got around to doing it. And then one day, after I've been saying this for about 6 months, I think the incongruence must have got too big to me. I sat down and this children's book, it came out of me. Just in 30 minutes, all the words came out. It was there. And I sent it off to a lady to put some pictures to it. And voila, now I am an author, right? It happened that quickly because I was saying it all that time. There's an incongruence. So that second tip then is we got to get clear on who we're being. Who do we want to be? So not who are you now, but who do you need to be to create that reality or that future that you want? When I was an employee, my definition was I'm an employee. I never would have said I'm an entrepreneur. I never would have said I was a business owner. But once I start defining myself as that now, is weird that then I take the actions to follow it. So that's two. A third one, I'm doing all mindset stuff actually, rather than I do a lot of strategy things with my clients as well, but I think the mindset piece is so key. I think another one I work on with clients, which is the topic of my podcast, which is life-changing questions for business owners. So the quality of our life is determined by the quality of the questions we ask ourselves. So if we ask a different question, really it means we think different thoughts, we feel different things, we take different actions, and then we get different results. Okay, so I've interviewed 200, probably coming on to 250 people now, successful experts, world-class leaders in their field. And I've asked them, what question have you asked that's had the biggest positive impact on your life? And if we can start thinking of different questions, we get these different answers, we get different results. So I wonder what's a question that you need to start asking yourself. Now, maybe it's something that you've heard already on the show today. Who am I? Right? Who do I need to be to get this result? Maybe it's, what am I grateful for? Maybe it's something around those. So asking yourself different questions, right? And now I'll give you one example on this. I had a client yesterday, and he's a really remarkable guy. He's a very senior leader, in his field, and he got back his review. Now he normally gets 5 out of 5 every time on every review, and for this reason, this time is the leader above him only gave him 4 out of 5, and he couldn't understand because he did everything he did last year and more, and he'd over delivered. And of course, so his language in his head, or his belief in his head, was around what. Here's his question: what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? There's an inherent belief there that I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? And so, immediately hearing that question, if we shifted that question, maybe it's not what he did wrong. He's presupposing he did that. Maybe it's maybe there is a different question there. Maybe the question is to the boss, hey, well, what would I need to do to get a 5 out of 5? Right? It doesn't presuppose that he's wrong. How can I do? Is there anything I can do differently? Is there anything I can serve differently? Now, once he starts asking different questions, I mean, the question could even be, boss, what would it take for you to give me a 5 out of 5? It may be the case his boss would never give a 5 out of 5 because he only thinks anyone's worth a 4, and if he gives him a 5 out of 5, there's no room for improvement. There may be a belief there. So ask different questions. We need to be examining the questions we're asking ourselves and ask ourselves different questions. I'll give you one other question that's really important on this, which is this true? Is this true? We sometimes make assumptions about things, and it guides our decisions and our actions. But asking, is this actually true? In his case, he made the assumption that he wasn't doing very well and that he was wrong. Okay, but is it true that you're wrong? Is it true that you didn't do well enough? Well, actually, no, it wasn't in that case. So we better think of a different way. But check your premises in your business as well. If you feel as though you can't get more leads or you can't get more clients, ask yourself, is that true? How else can I do this? Is this true? So there you go. There's 3. As I said, we can go on all day. So
thank you so much. That was so valuable. I'm so happy that you came here, Kevin. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's been fun being here. So really great questions.
And thank you, dear listener, for spending your precious time with us today. And in case you feel worthless and nobody seems to like you, we tell you, you're amazing, we love you, and you're a gift to everyone who crosses your path. And please tell yourself these sentences over and over again. Have an amazing day, and talk to you next week.